My name is Allison Parker and I'm 28 years old. I never thought I'd be staring at my phone in disbelief at a group text from my own parents that said, "We think it's best you step away from the family for now." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Our family had always been close-knit, though tensions had been simmering beneath the surface. The family business, Parker Family Enterprises, had been my life, my future. Now it felt like quicksand. I checked my phone again, hoping the message would somehow disappear. Instead, I watched as my Aunt Catherine's name appeared, with typing dots followed by her fierce defense of me that would change everything. Before I dive into what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And hit that subscribe button if family drama hits close to home. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for this journey of betrayal and redemption. Growing up, the Parker family was my whole world. My parents, Michael and Susan Parker, had raised me to believe that family always came first. Our regional restaurant chain, Parker Family Enterprises, wasn't just a business. It was our legacy, our identity, and supposedly my future. I'd watched my parents pour their hearts into growing what my grandmother Eleanor had started as a single diner into 5 successful locations across the state. I'd structured my entire life around the family business. Instead of pursuing job offers in Chicago or New York after college, I came home with my business degree, ready to help modernize our operations. My parents had always told me they were grooming me to take over someday. "This will all be yours," my father would say, gesturing proudly around our flagship restaurant. I believed him with my whole heart. Our family dynamic was complicated but loving. My mother's sister, Aunt Catherine, had always been my biggest champion. Unlike my mother, who was cautious and traditional, Aunt Catherine was bold and forward-thinking. She'd gone to culinary school in France before returning to help with the family business, bringing European influences to our classic American menu. My father's brother, Uncle Robert, was the conservative voice in the family. He managed our finances with an iron grip resistant to change or risk. His daughter, my cousin Megan, was 2 years older than me and had always seen me as competition rather than family. Where I was creative and relationship-focused, Megan was analytical and numbers-driven. She'd made it clear she had her sights set on leadership. Grandma Eleanor was our family's North Star. At 79, she no longer handled day-to-day operations but remained the heart of the business. Her original recipes were still the foundation of our menu, and her wisdom guided our major decisions. Lately, though, her health had been declining, bringing succession planning to the forefront of family discussions. The first signs of trouble appeared about 8 months ago. I'd spent 6 months researching restaurant industry trends and developing a comprehensive expansion proposal. My plan included opening 2 new concept restaurants that would appeal to younger demographics while maintaining our core brand identity. I'd analyzed market research, created financial projections, and even identified potential locations. "The restaurant industry is evolving," I explained during our quarterly board meeting, pointing to my presentation slides. "If we don't adapt, we'll be left behind." These new concept locations would let us test innovative ideas without risking our established brand. The initial reception seemed positive. My mother nodded encouragingly, and even Uncle Robert seemed interested in the financial projections. Grandma Eleanor watched me with pride shining in her eyes. "This is impressive work, Allison," she said when I finished. "You've put real thought into preserving our legacy while pushing us forward." But then I noticed Megan leaning over to whisper something to her father. Uncle Robert's expression shifted, his brow furrowing. "This seems awfully ambitious," he said, his tone cooling. "The capital investment alone would strain our resources, not to mention the risk to our reputation if these concepts don't resonate with customers." My father, who I'd expected to defend my ideas, suddenly looked uncertain. "Robert raises valid concerns," he said, avoiding my eyes. "Perhaps we should table this for now and focus on maximizing our existing operations." I left the meeting discouraged but determined. Over the next few weeks, I refined my proposal, addressing each concern raised at the meeting. I scheduled meetings with potential investors who could provide capital without diluting family ownership. I was all in. Then came the first betrayal. I was meeting a friend for lunch at Harvest Table, a new restaurant that had opened across town. As soon as I walked in, something felt eerily familiar. The layout resembled one of my concept sketches. The menu featured modernized comfort food with locally sourced ingredients, exactly what I had proposed. Even the signature cocktail menu included flavor combinations I had specifically researched. "When did they open?" I asked my friend weakly. "About 3 weeks ago," she replied, not noticing my shock. "It's been packed every night. They're already talking about opening a second location." My stomach dropped. Someone had leaked my ideas. Someone in my family had taken my carefully researched plans and shared them with a competitor. Why? What did they have to gain by sabotaging me? That night I confronted my family at our Sunday dinner, trying to keep my voice steady as I described what I'd seen. It's probably just coincidence, my father said dismissively. These trends are happening everywhere. This wasn't just similar, I insisted. They had the exact layout I designed, right down to the chef's table facing the open kitchen. Megan rolled her eyes. Sounds like you're seeing what you want to see. Maybe your ideas weren't as original as you thought. I looked around the table searching for allies. My mother stared at her plate. Uncle Robert busied himself with his wine glass. Only Aunt Catherine met my gaze, her expression troubled. Someone shared my presentation with them, I said finally. I need to know who. The silence that followed told me everything. Something was very wrong in the family I trusted completely. The discovery that my concepts had been stolen drove me to investigate. I started by reviewing who had access to my presentation files on our company server. The list was short: my parents, Uncle Robert, Megan, our IT manager Thomas, and myself. I checked the access logs and discovered something strange. Someone had copied my entire folder to an external drive at 9:47 p.m. on the night after our board meeting, long after everyone had gone home. I approached Thomas privately, and he confirmed what I suspected. The login used was your father's, he said uncomfortably. I assumed he had permission since, well, he's the boss. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My own father, I couldn't confront him directly without proof of what happened next, who he'd shared the files with and why. I began paying closer attention to family interactions, noticing subtle exchanges I'd previously missed. Uncle Robert would touch my father's shoulder reassuringly during meetings. Megan would smirk whenever I mentioned future planning. My mother seemed increasingly anxious, starting sentences but stopping when my father entered the room. Something significant was happening behind the scenes. The tension finally erupted at our monthly family dinner. The conversation had been strained, with everyone avoiding business talk until Grandma Eleanor asked about my expansion plans. Actually, I've been wondering what happened with those, I said, keeping my tone casual. The board never followed up after our last discussion. Business decisions need to be made with clear heads, not emotional attachments to pet projects, Uncle Robert replied. My proposal was based on data and market research, I countered. There was nothing emotional about it. You're too inexperienced to understand the complexities, he said dismissively. I have a business degree and have been working in the company for 6 years, I reminded him. If there are complexities I'm missing, shouldn't someone be mentoring me through them, rather than dismissing my ideas outright? You're being paranoid, Allison, Megan interjected. No one is dismissing you. Some ideas just aren't viable. Then why are those exact unviable ideas working beautifully at Harvest Table? I asked pointedly. A heavy silence fell over the table. My mother looked like she might cry. My father's face hardened. That's enough, he said firmly. This isn't the time or place. When is the time or place? I pressed. Because whenever I try to discuss this at work, I'm told we'll talk about it later. And now, at family dinner, I'm told this isn't the place. You're being hysterical, Uncle Robert said coldly. That night, I stayed late at the office, hoping to find evidence of what had happened to my proposal. As I was about to leave, I heard voices from my father's office. He and Uncle Robert were working late too. She's not going to let this go, Uncle Robert was saying. Allison's always been stubborn. She'll come around, my father replied. We just need to keep her busy with smaller projects until Megan's ready to step up. The expansion would have been too risky, Uncle Robert continued. Megan's approach is much more conservative, safer for the family. I know, my father sighed. But Allison's ideas do have value. That's why I shared her research with James Wilson. He invested in Harvest Table, and now we'll see if her concepts actually work without risking our own capital. I froze my hand over my mouth to stifle any sound. James Wilson was a frequent customer and local investor who had often expressed interest in partnering with us. My father had deliberately handed over my work to him, allowing him to profit from my ideas while keeping our family business safe from innovation. I stumbled backwards, knocking over a chair. The conversation in the office stopped abruptly. I grabbed my purse and fled before they could catch me, tears streaming down my face as I drove home in a daze. In my apartment, I broke down completely. All my dedication, all my sacrifice, staying in my hometown, turning down career opportunities, pouring my heart into the family business felt like a cruel joke. They had never intended for me to lead. They had been using me as an idea generator for Megan's eventual takeover. A knock at my door startled me. It was Aunt Catherine, concern etched on her face. Your mother called. Said you left the restaurant upset, she explained. What happened, sweetheart? I told her everything, the stolen proposal, the overheard conversation, the years of feeling like I was working toward a future that had apparently never been meant for me. Catherine listened silently, her expression darkening. When I finished, she took my hands in hers. I've watched this pattern in our family for decades, she said quietly. Your mother experienced something similar when she and I were younger. It's why she became so passive, so unwilling to rock the boat. What should I do? I asked, feeling utterly lost. That depends on what you want, she replied. If you stay in the family business, you need to understand the rules have always favored the men and those who don't challenge tradition. If you want to lead on your own terms, you might need to consider building something separate. Her words planted a seed in my mind. Something separate. A chance to prove my concepts without family interference. The next day, Grandma Eleanor requested a family meeting. Her health had been declining and she wanted to discuss succession planning. I arrived early hoping to speak with her privately, but everyone else had the same idea. The meeting was a disaster. Grandma announced her intention to step back entirely, which prompted immediate discussion of leadership restructuring. I think it's time we formally establish our next generation of leadership, Uncle Robert said smoothly. Megan has been developing excellent operational skills, and with Michael's guidance, I believe she's ready for more responsibility. What about Allison? Grandma Eleanor asked, looking at me with concern. Allison has wonderful creative energy, my father said, as if praising a child's finger painting. But leadership requires steadiness, predictability. She still needs to learn to work within established parameters. In other words, I said, unable to contain myself, know my place. The room fell silent. My mother looked stricken. Uncle Robert cleared his throat disapprovingly. That's not what your father meant, he said. Isn't it? I challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you've already decided Megan will lead while I'm expected to stay in a supporting role indefinitely, regardless of my contributions or capabilities. This attitude is exactly why Uncle Robert began. Enough, Grandma Eleanor interrupted, her voice surprisingly strong. This family built its success on unity and respect. I don't like what I'm hearing today. She looked around the table, her disappointment evident. We'll revisit this when calmer heads prevail. But as everyone filed out, I knew something fundamental had shifted. The family I thought I knew had shown its true colors, and I would never see them the same way again. After the disastrous family meeting, I threw myself into work with renewed determination. If my family wouldn't recognize my value, I'd prove it beyond any doubt. I arrived earlier than anyone else, stayed later, and volunteered for projects others avoided. I meticulously documented all my contributions, keeping copies of everything on my personal computer. Simultaneously, I began developing a business plan for a potential side venture, a single restaurant concept that would showcase all the innovations my family had rejected. I called it Eleanor's Legacy, planning to honor my grandmother's original vision while pushing it into the future. During lunch breaks, I researched small business loans and potential locations. After work, I met with local farmers and artisanal suppliers, building relationships that would become the foundation of my farm-to-table supply chain. The family dynamics grew increasingly strained. Our traditional Sunday dinners became exercises in polite fiction, everyone pretending nothing was wrong while tension thickened the air. My father watched me with suspicion, questioning my after-hours activities and commenting on my distracted demeanor. My mother attempted to play peacekeeper, but her efforts only highlighted the growing divide. I just wish everyone could get along like we used to, she'd say, wringing her hands. We didn't get along better before, Mom, I finally told her. I just didn't realize I was being undermined. Uncle Robert made little effort to hide his disapproval, frequently commenting on loyalty and gratitude in my presence. Megan became more overtly competitive, taking credit for my work in meetings and positioning herself as the natural future leader of Parker Enterprises. Aunt Catherine remained my steadfast ally, meeting me for coffee weekly to provide emotional support and business advice. As the only family member who had established an independent culinary reputation before rejoining the family business, she understood my ambitions. They're afraid of change, she explained during one of our meetings. And more importantly, they're afraid of losing control. Your vision threatens both. 2 months after our confrontation, Grandma Eleanor suffered a serious stroke. The family gathered at the hospital, our business conflicts temporarily forgotten in the face of potentially losing her. For 3 days we maintained a vigil in the waiting room, taking shifts at her bedside. During this time there was a fragile truce, a reminder of the bonds that had once seemed unbreakable. On the fourth day, Eleanor regained consciousness. Though weakened, her mind remained sharp. She requested to speak with each family member individually. When my turn came, I sat beside her bed fighting back tears as I held her frail hand. "You're so much like me at your age," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "So full of ideas and drive. I'm trying to make you proud," I told her. "I've always been proud," she assured me. "But I've been watching Allison. This family isn't giving you the room you need to grow." She squeezed my hand with surprising strength. Sometimes the greatest loyalty to a family legacy is having the courage to reimagine it. Her words felt like permission to challenge, to create, to forge my own path. When I left her room, something had shifted inside me. I was still a Parker, but perhaps my contribution to the family legacy would look different than I'd imagined. As Eleanor recovered, the family business matters resumed. A formal succession planning meeting was scheduled, but I received the calendar invitation 4 hours after everyone else, and only after Aunt Catherine asked why I hadn't responded. When I arrived at the conference room, it was clear discussions had already begun without me. "Ah, Allison," Uncle Robert said with artificial warmth. "We were just reviewing the organizational restructuring proposal." The presentation on the screen outlined a 5-year leadership transition plan. Megan was positioned for a newly created COO role with a clear path to CEO. My name appeared under brand and customer experience, a lateral move with no advancement potential. "When was this developed?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We've been working on it for several weeks," my father replied, avoiding my eyes. "It's been a collaborative effort." "Collaborative among whom? Because this is the first I'm hearing of it." "We didn't want to burden you while you were focused on the new menu launch," my mother said quickly. I looked around the table, taking in the averted gazes and uncomfortable shifts in posture. Only Megan met my eyes directly, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Congratulations on the promotion, Megan," I said evenly. "I'm curious though, what specific qualifications or achievements led to this decision?" An uncomfortable silence followed until Uncle Robert cleared his throat. "Megan has demonstrated exceptional leadership qualities and consistent performance," he stated firmly. "Her quarterly reviews have been outstanding." Something in his tone triggered my suspicion. That evening, I stayed late again, using my system access to review the HR files. What I found confirmed my worst fears. My performance evaluations had been altered. Projects I'd led successfully had been reassigned to Megan's record. Client relationships I'd nurtured were credited to team efforts under her leadership. I printed the evidence and brought it to my parents' home that night, laying the documents on their kitchen table without a word. "What's this?" my father asked, though his expression told me he already knew. "Evidence of fraud," I replied calmly. "My performance records have been systematically altered to diminish my contributions while inflating Megan's." My mother looked genuinely shocked, but my father's face hardened into a mask of authority I'd seen him use with difficult employees. "You shouldn't have access to these files," he said. "That's your response, not denying the manipulation, just criticizing me for discovering it." "You've always been too emotional for leadership," he said dismissively. "This little investigation proves it. Leaders need to make decisions based on what's best for the company, not personal grievances. Falsifying corporate records isn't what's best for the company," I countered. "It's potentially illegal and definitely unethical." "You're overreacting," my mother interjected anxiously. "I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation." I gathered the papers and stood up. "I used to think this company's values aligned with my own because we were family. I was wrong on both counts." As I walked out, I heard my father call after me, "Don't make an enemy of your family, Allison. You won't win that fight." It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. And for the first time, I was ready to test whether it was one he could keep. The succession planning meeting marked a point of no return. I'd seen behind the family curtain and couldn't unsee the manipulation. Rather than confronting them further, which would only lead to more gaslighting and denials, I channeled my energy into my independent project. Eleanor's legacy was no longer just a concept, but my path forward. I refined my business plan and began meeting with potential investors. Thomas Grant, a restaurant industry veteran who had mentored me since college, reviewed my financials and offered constructive feedback. Lauren Davis, my best friend since high school and now a successful marketing executive, helped develop branding materials. I was building a support network outside the family business, and it felt liberating. My most promising meeting was with James Wilson, yes, the same investor who had funded Harvest Table using my stolen concepts. He didn't recognize me at first, as we'd only briefly met at Parker family events. I didn't reveal our connection initially, instead presenting my new concept on its own merits. "This is impressive work," he said, reviewing my projections. "Very thorough. The concept feels familiar yet innovative. It should, I replied calmly. It builds on ideas I developed for Parker Enterprises that somehow found their way to Harvest Table. His expression shifted from confusion to recognition, then discomfort. I was under the impression those concepts were being shared with my full authorization. They weren't, I said simply. But I'm not here to place blame. Harvest Table's success actually validates my business model. I'm here because I believe in this concept and my ability to execute it even better than they have. By the end of our meeting, Wilson was intrigued enough to request a follow-up discussion with his investment team. It wasn't a commitment, but it was a start. Aunt Catherine's support went beyond emotional encouragement. After reviewing my business plan, she made an unexpected offer. I want to invest, she said during one of our coffee meetings. I've been saving for years and I believe in you and this concept. Catherine, that's a significant risk, I cautioned. If my family finds out, let me worry about that, she interrupted. This family has a pattern of stifling innovation while claiming to protect tradition. Your grandmother experienced it, I experienced it, and now they're doing it to you. She leaned forward, her expression intense. Eleanor didn't build this business by playing it safe. She took risks when everyone told her a woman couldn't succeed in restaurants. She shared stories I'd never heard, how Grandma Eleanor had faced similar resistance from her brothers when starting the business, how she'd had to secretly use her inheritance because no bank would loan to a woman in those days. These family history lessons painted a pattern of women's contributions being minimized while men took credit for their success. As Grandma Eleanor recovered at home, I visited her regularly, often helping her sort through old photographs and memorabilia. During one such visit, she directed me to a locked drawer in her desk. There's something I want you to have, she said, handing me a small key. Inside the drawer was a leather-bound journal, her original business diary from when she opened the first restaurant, along with handwritten recipe cards containing the original versions of our menu items before they were standardized and modified over the years. These are the true heart of our family's success, she told me. Not the buildings or the bank accounts. This creativity, this willingness to try something different, that's the real Parker legacy. Dad might not agree with you giving these to me, I said carefully. She smiled, a flash of her old fire returning. What your father doesn't know won't hurt him. Besides, these are mine to give and I choose you. That journal became my blueprint and inspiration. Eleanor had faced challenges I never imagined yet persevered with grace and determination. If she could launch a restaurant in an era when women couldn't even open bank accounts without male approval, I could certainly overcome my current obstacles. My project gained momentum. The local bank approved my small business loan application. I found a perfect location, ironically just 3 blocks from our original Parker restaurant. I began discreetly meeting with contractors to discuss renovations. A few loyal Parker employees, hearing rumors of my venture, approached me about joining when the time came. Everything was coming together until the investors' dinner. I had scheduled a final presentation with Wilson and his team at an upscale restaurant across town, carefully selecting a venue where I was unlikely to encounter family members. I was midway through my presentation when I saw the maitre escorting 3 people to our private dining room: my father, my mother, and Uncle Robert. My words faltered as they approached the table. I apologize for interrupting, my father said smoothly, though his eyes were cold. James, may we have a word before you make any decisions regarding this venture? Wilson looked uncomfortable but nodded. Allison, would you excuse us for a moment? I sat stunned as they stepped outside. Through the glass partition, I could see my father speaking intensely, occasionally gesturing toward me. Uncle Robert nodded gravely. My mother stood silently beside them, her expression a mask of anxiety. When they returned, Wilson's demeanor had completely changed. I think we should postpone this discussion, he said, not meeting my eyes. Some concerns have been raised that require further investigation. What concerns? I demanded. Whatever they've told you, this isn't the appropriate setting, my father interrupted. Family matters should be discussed privately. The investment team gathered their materials and made awkward exits. As the last one left, I turned to my family. How did you know about this meeting? I asked, my voice shaking with anger. That's your question, Uncle Robert scoffed. Not why you're attempting to compete directly with your own family's business. Not why you're soliciting our investors. Wilson isn't your investor, I retorted. He's an independent businessman who can decide for himself where to put his money. After we warned him about your inexperience and emotional instability, I doubt he'll be taking that risk, my father said coldly. The restaurant seemed to spin around me as the full impact of his words sank in. You're deliberately sabotaging me. We're protecting our family business from your reckless actions, Uncle Robert corrected. By lying about me, by interfering with my professional relationships, we know about your meetings with our suppliers, my mother said quietly. And about you approaching our staff. The company paid for your business degree, Allison. We invested in you, and this is how you repay us. The betrayal cut deep, not just their interference with my investors, but the revelation that they'd been investigating me, tracking my movements, possibly even monitoring my communications. I've given everything to this family, I said, fighting to keep my composure. Years of loyalty, innovative ideas that you stole and gave away, working holidays and weekends while Megan took vacations. I stayed when I had offers elsewhere because I believed in our family. And yet, at the first sign of not getting your way, you're willing to become our competition, my father said. The first sign, I laughed bitterly. You've been undermining me for years. I just finally opened my eyes to see it. The confrontation ended with my father delivering an ultimatum: abandon my independent plans and accept the role they'd chosen for me, or face the full legal and financial consequences of competing against Parker Enterprises, including potential lawsuits over intellectual property. As they left, my mother touched my arm. Please reconsider, Allison. Family should come first. I looked into her eyes, searching for the mother who had once encouraged my dreams. That works both ways, Mom. Remember that. Alone in the private dining room, surrounded by my now useless presentation materials, I finally allowed the tears to come. This wasn't just a business setback, it was the death of the family I thought I had. The weeks following the investors' dinner were the darkest I'd experienced. I moved through my days at Parker Enterprises like a ghost, performing my duties mechanically while minimizing interaction with my family. At home, I alternated between fits of angry productivity, refining my business plan, researching alternative funding sources, and periods of paralyzing depression. Lauren visited, often bringing food when I forgot to eat, and forcing me out for walks when I'd been inside too long. They haven't won unless you give up, she reminded me. Aunt Catherine called daily, though she'd been notably absent from family gatherings since our confrontation. They're watching me too now, she explained. Robert asked pointed questions about my finances. I think they suspect I might help you. The only bright spot was my continued visits with Grandma Eleanor, whose health had stabilized, though remained fragile. Her eyes would light up when I arrived, and she'd ask detailed questions about my restaurant concept, offering suggestions drawn from her decades of experience. During one visit, she confided, I've been thinking about my legacy, about what I want to leave behind. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The restaurants are important, but they're not everything. It's the values behind them that matter: innovation, quality, treating people with respect. 3 months after our confrontation, Eleanor passed away peacefully in her sleep. Despite our estrangement, the family came together in grief. At the funeral, I stood beside my parents, accepting condolences and maintaining the public fiction of family unity. Privately, I was shattered, having lost my greatest champion. The reading of Eleanor's will a week later changed everything. The family gathered in our attorney's office, somber in our dark clothing, as Mr. Anderson prepared to distribute Eleanor's estate. Most provisions were as expected: the family home to my parents, personal items divided among family members, her majority share in Parker Enterprises split between my father and Uncle Robert. Then came the surprise. To my granddaughter, Allison Parker, Mr. Anderson read, I leave the sum of $500,000 with the express instruction that it be used to establish her own culinary enterprise. Additionally, I leave her my collection of original recipes, including full rights to use and adapt them commercially, with the sole condition that she acknowledge their origin in the Parker family tradition. The room fell silent. My father's face darkened with shock and anger. Uncle Robert started to object but was silenced by the attorney. Mrs. Parker's wishes were quite clear and legally binding, Mr. Anderson stated firmly. She made these arrangements shortly after her stroke, with full mental capacity as verified by her doctors. My mother reached for my hand, but I pulled away gently. This wasn't reconciliation, this was vindication. Eleanor had seen the truth and made her choice. She'd given me not just financial means, but something far more valuable: the freedom to honor her legacy on my own terms. The aftermath of the will reading was predictably tumultuous. At the family home where relatives had gathered after the attorney's office, the facade of unity crumbled completely. This is outrageous, Uncle Robert fumed. She was clearly not in her right mind. Mother knew exactly what she was doing, my father countered, surprising me with his defense of Eleanor's decision until he continued. But that doesn't mean we can't find a way to keep Allison's inheritance within the family business structure. What are you suggesting? I asked warily. A compromise, he proposed. We establish a new concept restaurant under the Parker umbrella. You'll have creative control but within our existing company. The inheritance funds would be your investment in the venture, giving you an ownership stake while keeping everything in the family. For a moment, one brief weak moment, I considered it the path of least resistance, a chance to realize my vision while maintaining family connections. Then I remembered the altered performance reviews, the stolen concepts, the sabotaged investor meeting. No, I said firmly. Grandma Eleanor was clear about her wishes. She wanted me to establish my own enterprise, not fold it into a company that's repeatedly undermined me. After everything we've done for you, Megan interjected bitterly, you'd still turn your back on this family. What exactly have you done for me, Megan? Taken credit for my work, whispered in your father's ear against me. The argument escalated rapidly, with years of resentment and hidden agendas spilling into the open. Relatives who had come to mourn Eleanor watched in shock as the perfect Parker family image shattered before their eyes. Enough, my father finally shouted. This is neither the time nor place. But it was too late. The damage was done. As family members departed awkwardly, I knew there would be no going back to pretending everything was fine. I resigned from Parker Enterprises the next day, a brief professional email that gave 2 weeks' notice. My father called immediately. This is a mistake, he warned. One you'll regret. The only mistake I regret is not seeing the truth sooner, I replied. With Eleanor's inheritance secured, I threw myself into bringing Eleanor's legacy to life. I leased the location I'd previously identified, hired a talented chef who had worked at our original restaurant years earlier, and began renovations. Each step felt like both an ending and a beginning, closing the chapter on my family business career, while honoring the true Parker spirit of entrepreneurship. Aunt Catherine became my unofficial partner, her culinary expertise invaluable as we developed a menu that reimagined Eleanor's classic recipes for contemporary tastes. We sourced ingredients locally, designed a space that felt both nostalgic and modern, and built a team that shared our vision of quality and innovation. 3 weeks before our scheduled opening, as I reviewed final construction details with my contractor, my phone buzzed with a group message. The sender was my father, and the recipients included my mother, Uncle Robert, Aunt Catherine, Megan, and several other family members. After much discussion, it read, "We think it's best you step away from the family for now. Your decision to compete directly with Parker Enterprises using recipes and concepts developed within our company constitutes a betrayal we cannot overlook. Until you reconsider this destructive path, we ask that you not attend family functions or contact family members regarding personal matters. Business communications should be directed through our legal counsel going forward." I stared at the phone, the words blurring as tears filled my eyes. Despite everything, some childish part of me had still hoped for reconciliation, for my parents to eventually see and acknowledge my value. That hope died as I watched the message being read by each recipient, green checkmarks appearing beside their names, all except Aunt Catherine. Then Catherine's name appeared with typing dots. My breath caught as her response loaded. "I've stood by silently for 40 years watching this family stifle creativity and independence in the name of tradition and unity," she wrote. "I watched you do it to Susan when she wanted to expand the catering division. I watched you do it to me when I returned from France with new techniques. And now I've watched you do it to Allison, who has shown nothing but loyalty and innovation. If supporting my niece's right to build her own legacy means I must step away as well, then consider this my farewell. Some family traditions aren't worth preserving." Minutes later, my phone rang. It was Catherine. I meant every word she said before I could speak. "And I'm coming over right now with a bottle of champagne. We have a restaurant to open." As I ended the call, I realized I was smiling through my tears. I had lost a family, yes, but perhaps I was finding a truer one. Aunt Catherine's defiance in the group chat created shockwaves through the Parker family. Within hours, the message thread exploded with responses. Some relatives I barely knew took sides, old grievances surfaced, and decades of carefully maintained family fiction began to unravel. "Catherine has always been dramatic," Uncle Robert wrote dismissively. "This isn't about stifling creativity, it's about loyalty and respecting what Michael and I have built." "What you've built," Catherine fired back. "Eleanor founded this business when you were still in high school, Robert. Michael joined after college. Neither of you built anything, you inherited it, and have been coasting on Eleanor's vision ever since." My cousin Megan jumped in. "Aunt Catherine, with all due respect, you've always encouraged Allison's unrealistic expectations. The business needs stability, not constant disruption." Then surprisingly, my mother's name appeared with typing dots. Her message was brief but significant. I think we should at least talk to Allison directly before cutting her off. This text wasn't the right approach. My father's response came swiftly. Susan, we discussed this. A clean break is best for everyone. The thread continued, but I stopped reading. Catherine arrived as promised with champagne and a determination to focus on the future, not the past. Let them fight it out, she said, pouring 2 glasses. We have more important things to do. She was right. The restaurant opening was weeks away, and there were countless details still requiring attention. The menu needed finalization, staff required training, and marketing materials had to be distributed. I channeled my hurt into productivity, working 16-hour days alongside Catherine and our growing team. Word of the family split spread quickly through our small business community. Some suppliers, fearful of losing Parker Enterprises' business, backed out of agreements with me. Others, perhaps tired of Uncle Robert's notorious price negotiations, quietly offered me better terms than they'd given my family. Former Parker employees began reaching out. Thomas, our IT manager, resigned and asked to join my team. The atmosphere there is toxic now, he explained. Your father questions everyone's loyalty. And Megan's been promoted to operations director despite having half the experience of others who were passed over. Lauren, my marketing friend, reported that local food bloggers were already buzzing about the Parker family drama and speculating about my new venture. Rather than hiding from the narrative, we decided to control it. We crafted a press release emphasizing Eleanor's legacy as a celebration of my grandmother's pioneering spirit, positioning the restaurant as an evolution rather than a rejection of family tradition. 3 days after the group message, I received an unexpected call from James Wilson, the investor who had witnessed my family's intervention at our dinner meeting. I've been reflecting on our last interaction, he said carefully. And I've had some interesting conversations with Catherine Mitchell since then. I'd like to meet again if you're open to it. The meeting revealed that Catherine had reached out to Wilson, directly sharing her perspective on the family dynamics and vouching for my business acumen. More importantly, she'd connected him with several respected industry figures who confirmed my reputation and capabilities. Your family painted a picture of you as emotionally unstable and inexperienced, Wilson admitted. But the evidence and testimonials suggest otherwise. I believe I may have been misled. By the end of our meeting, Wilson had tentatively agreed to a smaller investment than originally discussed, enough to provide additional security without giving him controlling interest. It was a vote of confidence I desperately needed. As news of Catherine's split from the family business spread, she began receiving calls from longtime Parker customers expressing support. She'd built relationships with patrons over decades, and many were more loyal to her than to the restaurant itself. Some explicitly mentioned they would follow her to our new venture. My parents attempted reconciliation on their terms a week after the group message. My mother called first, her voice carefully controlled. Your father and I feel the situation has escalated unnecessarily, she began. We'd like to meet and discuss a compromise. The meeting at a neutral coffee shop revealed their true intentions. They weren't offering reconciliation, but capitulation. I could return to the family and business if I abandoned my restaurant plans, transferred Eleanor's inheritance to a family investment fund, and publicly apologized for the discord. This isn't a compromise, I pointed out. It's a surrender. It's an opportunity to fix what you've broken, my father countered. I didn't break this family, I said quietly. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken. They left angry and frustrated, but the interaction strengthened my resolve. I was no longer the dutiful daughter seeking approval. I was a businesswoman making decisions based on my values and vision. Meanwhile, Eleanor's legacy took shape. The renovation transformed the space into something both familiar and fresh, warm wood tones, reminiscent of the original Parker restaurant, but with modern lighting and an open kitchen that invited diners to connect with the cooking process. We incorporated photographs of Eleanor throughout her life, celebrating her journey from young entrepreneur to respected restaurateur. The menu balanced classics from Eleanor's recipe collection with innovative interpretations. Her famous buttermilk biscuits remained unchanged, while her chicken dish was updated with locally sourced ingredients and contemporary presentation. Each item told a story of continuity and evolution. As opening day approached, we received a cease and desist letter from Parker Enterprises attorneys, claiming the use of Eleanor's recipes constituted intellectual property theft. Our lawyer, after reviewing Eleanor's will and the specific language granting me rights to the recipes, assured me our position was legally sound. They're testing your resolve, he explained, hoping you'll back down rather than fight. I authorized him to respond firmly, making it clear we would defend our legal right to honor Eleanor's wishes. The implied threat of a public legal battle, which would necessarily make the family conflict even more public, apparently resonated. No further legal action followed. 2 days before our opening, a bouquet arrived from Grandma Eleanor's favorite florist with a card that read simply, "She would be proud, S." My mother's small act of rebellion touched me deeply, though I knew she wasn't ready to openly defy my father. That same day I received a text from Megan that demonstrated just how differently we viewed the situation. "I hope you know what you've done to this family. Grandma would be ashamed of how you've twisted her legacy." I didn't respond. We were speaking different languages, operating from entirely different values, systems. No text message would bridge that gap. The night before opening, our team gathered for a final tasting and pep talk. Looking around at these people, who had chosen to join me, some leaving secure positions at Parker Enterprises, others new faces bringing fresh energy, I felt a surge of gratitude and responsibility. Tomorrow isn't just about food, I told them. It's about courage, integrity, and honoring traditions while creating new ones. Whatever happens, we've already succeeded by building something true to our values. Catherine raised her glass. To Eleanor's true legacy, not just restaurants, but the courage to chart your own course. As we clinked glasses, I realized I'd found a new kind of family, one built on shared values and mutual respect, rather than obligation and blood ties. The group text, that had felt like an ending, had actually been the beginning of something far stronger than what I'd lost. Opening day arrived with a mixture of excitement and anxiety churning in my stomach. I'd been at the restaurant since 4:30 a.m., reviewing every detail one final time. The tables were perfectly set, the kitchen immaculately organized, the bar fully stocked. Eleanor's photographs watched over us from carefully chosen spots throughout the space, her smile encouraging us forward. Catherine arrived an hour later, immediately checking the biscuit dough she'd prepared the previous evening. "Perfect rise," she announced with satisfaction. "Eleanor's touch is with us today." Our staff arrived for final preparations, moving with the nervous energy of performers before a big show. We gathered for a brief meeting, reviewing service procedures and menu specials one last time. I'd hired experienced people who knew their jobs well, so this was more pep talk than instruction. "Whatever happens today, remember why we're here," I told them. "We're not just serving food, we're creating experiences and honoring a legacy of excellence. Let's make Eleanor proud." By 10 o'clock, everything was ready. Our soft opening lunch service was fully booked, a mix of friends, industry colleagues, and curious diners who'd heard about the Parker family drama and wanted a first-hand look. Lauren had strategically invited several food bloggers and local journalists, ensuring our opening would be well documented. At precisely 11:00 a.m., I unlocked the front door and welcomed our first guests. The service began smoothly, with Catherine expediting in the kitchen while I moved through the dining room, greeting guests and ensuring everything met our standards. The reactions were overwhelmingly positive, particular praise for the updated version of Eleanor's chicken and the perfect texture of her classic biscuits. A local food critic in the corner was taking notes between bites, occasionally nodding appreciatively. A couple near the window kept pointing to menu items and whispering excitedly. At the bar, 2 regular customers from the original Parker restaurant raised their glasses to me with encouraging smiles. Around 1:30 p.m., as the lunch rush was beginning to ease, Thomas approached me with an anxious expression. "They're here," he said quietly. I didn't need to ask who they were. Through the front windows I could see my parents, Uncle Robert and Megan, approaching the restaurant. They were dressed formally, as if attending a business meeting, rather than a casual lunch. My father's expression was stern, my mother's anxious. Uncle Robert looked ready for battle, while Megan wore a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Shall I tell them we're fully booked?" Thomas offered. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "No, seat them at table 14. It was a prominent table in the center of the restaurant. I wouldn't hide them away, nor would I give them the privacy to create a scene without witnesses. Catherine emerged from the kitchen, alerted by the staff's sudden tension. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, spotting my family through the window. "Absolutely," I replied with more confidence than I felt. "This is my restaurant and they're just customers today." I waited until they were seated before approaching their table. A hush fell over the nearby diners, many of whom recognized the Parker family and understood the significance of their presence. "Welcome to Eleanor's legacy," I said professionally, handing them menus. "Thank you for coming." "Quite a crowd for opening day," my father observed, glancing around critically. "Let's hope you can maintain it." "The decor is interesting," Megan added, with a dismissive gesture toward Eleanor's photographs. "A bit sentimental," don't you think? Our customers seem to appreciate connecting with the history behind the food, I replied evenly. May I tell you about today's specials? I proceeded to describe the menu professionally, just as I had for every other table. Uncle Robert interrupted several times with pointed questions about sourcing and pricing, which I answered candidly. My mother remained silent, studying the menu with unusual intensity. We'll need a few minutes, my father finally said. As I walked away, I overheard Uncle Robert. Using her recipes is one thing, but these prices are unsustainable. They'll be closed within 6 months. Rather than engage, I continued working the dining room, checking on other tables and ensuring everyone was enjoying their experience. When I returned to take their order, they were huddled in intense conversation that stopped abruptly as I approached. They ordered conservatively the safest, most traditional items on the menu. As I turned to enter their order, my father spoke again. Allison, we're here as a courtesy, he said quietly. One final opportunity to reconsider your position before things become more complicated. I appreciate you visiting our restaurant, I replied professionally. I'll put your order in right away. In the kitchen, Catherine had already heard from one of the servers and was preparing to personally oversee the family's food. No special treatment, I instructed. Positive or negative. They get exactly the same quality and service as everyone else. Understood, she nodded. Though I'm tempted to accidentally drop the peppermill in Uncle Robert's soup. That made me smile despite my tension. Save that for their second visit. The family's food was prepared with the same care as every other order. I delivered it myself, presenting each dish with a brief description as I would for any table. They ate mostly in silence, occasionally exchanging glances or whispered comments. When I returned to check on them, my father pushed his half-eaten plate away with a disappointed expression. The chicken is overdone, and these aren't Eleanor's biscuits, not the way she made them. I'm sorry you feel that way, I said calmly. The biscuits follow her original recipe exactly. I'd be happy to bring you something else if you prefer. That won't be necessary, Uncle Robert interjected. We've seen enough. My mother finally spoke, her voice barely audible. It's lovely, Allison. Different, but nice. Susan, my father warned. Megan smiled coldly. It's certainly quaint. Though I'm not sure how you'll compete long-term with our established customer base and superior locations. I could feel eyes from nearby tables, customers watching this family drama unfold. I maintained my professional demeanor despite the provocation. I appreciate your feedback, I said evenly. Would anyone like dessert? Our butterscotch pudding was one of Grandma Eleanor's favorites. We're finished here, my father announced, standing abruptly. Clearly this conversation is better continued privately. I'm afraid that won't be possible today, I replied. We're fully booked through dinner service and I have responsibilities to my staff and customers. Uncle Robert's face reddened. This attitude is exactly why. Robert, my mother interrupted sharply, surprising all of us. Not here. My father threw his napkin on the table and reached for his wallet. I shook my head. Your lunch is complimentary today, I said. Thank you for coming. We don't need your charity, he snapped, slapping several large bills on the table, far more than the meal cost. It was a power move meant to diminish my gesture. In that case, thank you for your generous tip, I replied. Our staff will appreciate it. They left with minimal further comment, my father guiding my mother firmly by the elbow, while Uncle Robert walked stiffly behind. Megan lingered briefly, leaning close to whisper, enjoy your moment while it lasts. When reality hits, don't expect a warm welcome back. As the door closed behind them, I became aware of the restaurant's unusual quiet. Then from a corner table, someone began to applaud. Others joined in the spontaneous ovation, spreading until most of the dining room was participating. These strangers had witnessed my composure in the face of family rejection and were offering their support. Catherine emerged from the kitchen, putting an arm around my shoulders. You handled that beautifully, she said. Eleanor would have been so proud. For the first time that day, I felt tears threatening. I smiled at our customers, nodded in acknowledgement of their support, and retreated briefly to the office to compose myself. When I returned, business continued as usual, though many guests made a point of complimenting the food and atmosphere as they left. The afternoon passed in a blur of service details and operational adjustments. By the time our dinner service concluded at 11 p.m., exhaustion had replaced anxiety. The staff gathered for a quick debrief, sharing highlights and identifying improvements for the next day. Despite the family confrontation, opening day had been an unqualified success, fully booked, overwhelmingly positive feedback, and several advance reservations from lunch customers eager to return. After everyone left, Catherine and I shared a quiet glass of wine at the bar, too tired for extensive conversation but needing a moment to process the day's events. "Tomorrow will be easier," she assured me. "Will it?" I wondered aloud. "They're not going to stop, you know." "Probably not," she agreed. "But you've proven you can handle it. And you're not alone." Looking around the restaurant, I felt a complex mix of emotions, pride in what we'd created, sadness for what had been lost, determination to succeed despite the obstacles, and most surprisingly, a growing sense of peace with the path I'd chosen. My family might never understand or accept my decisions. The road ahead would undoubtedly hold more confrontations and challenges. But for the first time since receiving that group text, I felt completely certain that I was exactly where I was meant to be. 1 year after opening day, Eleanor's legacy had not only survived but thrived beyond my most optimistic projections. We'd expanded our hours to include Sunday brunch, added a small private dining room for special events, and been featured in regional and national publications. Most importantly, we'd built a loyal customer base who appreciated our combination of traditional recipes and innovative approaches. The journey hadn't been smooth. As threatened, my family had created various obstacles, spreading rumors among suppliers, attempting to poach key staff members, and even opening a heritage menu section at their flagship restaurant, featuring suspiciously similar versions of our most popular dishes. But each challenge had ultimately strengthened our resolve and creativity. Catherine and I had settled into a comfortable partnership, with her managing kitchen operations, while I handled the business aspects and customer experience. Our staff had become a tight-knit team, many commenting that our restaurant felt more like family than their previous workplaces, a comparison that always made me smile. On a personal level, I'd gradually rebuilt my life without the family connections that had previously defined it. The first few months had been lonely, with holidays particularly difficult. Lauren and other friends had stepped in, creating new traditions to replace the ones I'd lost. Thomas had introduced me to his circle of friends, expanding my social network beyond family-adjacent relationships. I hadn't spoken directly with my parents since the opening day confrontation, though I occasionally received updates through mutual acquaintances. Parker Enterprises had expanded to a 6th location but was reportedly struggling with consistency issues. Megan had been formally named as the future CEO, with my father announcing his intention to retire within 5 years. The news that had affected me most deeply came from an unexpected source, James Wilson, who had become a regular customer and eventually a friend. During one of his visits, he mentioned casually that my mother had been seen dining alone at Harvest Table, the restaurant that had originally copied my concepts. She asked a lot of questions about their business model, he reported. She seemed particularly interested in their approach to balancing traditional and innovative menu items. The thought of my mother conducting reconnaissance, perhaps questioning her own role in our family conflict, gave me a glimmer of hope I hadn't allowed myself to feel for months. I didn't pursue it, wasn't ready to, but I filed the information away carefully. For our 1-year anniversary celebration, we planned a special evening honoring Eleanor's legacy. We created a tasting menu featuring her original recipes alongside our contemporary interpretations, with proceeds benefiting a scholarship fund for female culinary students that we'd established in her name. The event sold out immediately. Local media covered the preparations, and several industry figures planned to attend. What I hadn't anticipated was the small note that arrived 3 days before the event, handwritten on my mother's personal stationery. "Allison, I would like to attend your anniversary celebration. Just me. Would that be acceptable, Mom?" After long consideration and a frank discussion with Catherine, I replied with a simple yes. "I'll reserve a table for one." The anniversary evening arrived, the restaurant transformed with subtle decorative touches, Eleanor's favorite flowers on each table, vintage photographs displayed throughout the space, her original handwritten recipes framed as artwork. We'd hired a photographer to document the event, and a local jazz trio provided gentle background music. I was reviewing final details when Catherine touched my arm and nodded toward the entrance. My mother stood there alone, elegantly dressed, and looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I crossed the restaurant to greet her, our first face-to-face meeting in nearly a year. "Thank you for coming," I said formally, not yet ready for more personal interaction. "Thank you for allowing it," she replied. "Everything looks beautiful." I escorted her to her table, not centered prominently as I'd placed the family on opening day, but in a comfortable corner with a good view of both the room and the open kitchen. As she settled in, she handed me a small gift bag. "This isn't the time," she said quickly. "But I wanted you to have this. When you have a moment." The evening proceeded smoothly, each course presented with a brief story connecting Eleanor's original recipe to our modern interpretation. My mother watched everything with keen interest, occasionally making notes in a small notebook. She spoke little, simply observing the restaurant's operations and customer interactions. Late in the evening, during a brief lull, I finally opened her gift in the privacy of my office. Inside was a small leather-bound book, Eleanor's personal address book. Tucked inside was a note in my mother's handwriting. "Eleanor left this with me years ago with instructions to give it to whoever truly carried on her spirit, not just her name. I should have given it to you sooner. It contains contacts for her original suppliers, notes on seasonal menu planning, and personal reflections on building a business as a woman in a male-dominated industry. I was wrong to stay silent when your father and Robert pushed you aside. I'm sorry, Allison. Truly sorry." Beneath the note was a photograph I'd never seen before, Eleanor in her 20s, standing proudly in front of her first restaurant on opening day. The resemblance between us was striking, from our determined expressions to the way we stood, with shoulders squared against uncertainty. When I returned to the dining room, my mother was preparing to leave. Our eyes met across the room and I nodded slightly acknowledgement, not yet forgiveness, but a small opening where before there had been only a wall. "Your grandmother would be proud," she said quietly as I walked her to the door. "Not just of the restaurant, but of your courage." "Thank you," I replied, the words catching slightly in my throat. "Your father and I." She began, then stopped herself. "That's a conversation for another time if you're ever willing." Perhaps I allowed. Someday, after she left, Catherine found me staring thoughtfully after her. "Baby steps," she said wisely. "Healing doesn't happen overnight." The anniversary celebration continued into the evening, a beautiful affirmation of everything we'd built. As customers shared stories of their own family traditions and connections to food, I realized that Eleanor's true legacy wasn't just recipes or restaurants. It was the understanding that families come in many forms, defined more by love and support than by blood or obligation. In the quiet aftermath, as staff cleared the last tables and the kitchen wound down operations, I found myself in the center of the empty dining room, surrounded by the business I'd built from pain and determination. The path forward wasn't entirely clear, but for the first time I felt ready to explore the possibility of reconciliation, not by surrendering my independence or vision, but by establishing new boundaries based on mutual respect. The group text, that had once felt like an ending, had actually been the beginning of finding my true self, separate from family expectations and obligations. Whatever happened next, whether my mother's visit represented a genuine turning point or merely a momentary connection, I knew with certainty that I would continue honoring Eleanor's legacy in my own way, on my own terms. And that ultimately was the greatest legacy she could have left me. Not recipes or resources, but the courage to chart my own course even when the winds of family approval blew in a different direction. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own path? Drop a comment below sharing your experience or what you would have done in my situation. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to hear more stories of family drama and personal growth. I read every comment and would love to hear your thoughts on setting boundaries with family. Thank you for listening to my journey. Remember that sometimes the family we choose is more supportive than the one we're born into.